Let's get going. I'm David, our Cook County Clerk, and as you know, we have two jurisdictions within Cook County. Langdon Neal, Chairman of the Chicago Board of Elections, has the city part, and I, the County Clerk, have the suburban part. So we're both going to give remarks, and then we'll take your questions. Okay, and it's funny, we call this a pre-election press conference, but we're living a new era now. Now, this is the 15th day we've been voting. Tomorrow, Election Day, is actually the 16th day, so it's a very different world, very challenging for us. So the key thing for us right now, when we look at some of the numbers, is if you look at early voting, mail voting, which is the old absentee, and what we call grace period registration and voting. Okay, every day is an election, and new records. So overall, for us in suburban Cook, 169,000 plus have already voted. Suburban Cook County voters have cast their ballots already. That's a 53% increase over 2010, and about 12% of the registered voters. And if you want to do the math, it's a much higher percentage of those who are likely to vote. Very significant. Now let's talk about what's new for tomorrow. Grace period registration, or I'm sorry, election day registration is a term we use, available for the first time in Illinois. It's a great opportunity for those voters that for whatever reason moved or not caught up, and they can still register and vote tomorrow, but only at selected sites. I hope that in the future we'll have election day registration in home precincts, where it's much easier for people, but right now we have this experiment. And so all those who are not registered can vote tomorrow. In suburban Cook, we have 18 sites in suburban Cook. So look for those sites online, ask around, but don't go to your local precinct. The usual kind of thing, you need two forms of identification, one with your current address. So that's what's particularly new, and hopefully voters will take advantage of election day registration, because also previously, if they voted provisionally, their ballots would have not counted, but now they will. We know that people procrastinate to register, some because they don't realize they need to. Also something called grace period registration and voting, also breaking records. We had 4,388 suburban Cook County voters registered this way. And that's 3 times what we had in 2010, so that's a new midterm record. Now a big factor for that is expanded grace period. Remember, that grace period means people who didn't register by the deadline October 7th can still do it. So we're tracking those numbers as well. And we believe by having grace period in all of our early voting sites, it's what we call full service, and it seems like the voters really like that. So a full service opportunity, if you're already registered, you vote early. If you weren't, you can be a grace period register and voter. Now let's look at grace period for a moment in terms of who they are. From our preliminary information divided between men and women and spread out among age groups. For example, 15% of all the 18 to 24-year-olds were grace period, and 90% of the grace period were 55 to 64-year-olds. Now let's turn to early voting just for a moment, which is ended officially yesterday. So we have a new midterm record for early voting. We had just over 128,000 suburban Cook County voters do that, which is a 52.6% jump over 2010. A 52.6% jump, very significant, and nearly 4 times what we had in the beginning of early voting back in 2006. The busiest sites in suburban Cook were Orland, Arlington Heights, and Northbrook, Matson, and Schaumburg. Early voting, from our best guess, also divided between men and women pretty significantly, but it did skew toward early voters. Now let's look at mail voting, because that's extremely significant and one of the newer factors. The previous high for voting by mail, which was the old, we call absentee, was 36,754 ballots in November of 2012. So far, we've had 62,000, now that's just applications, 62,000 people ask for a mail ballot, of which already 37,000 have been returned. Now remember, that's also very important for those people who are worried about their ballots. If they're postmarked today, the day before the election, November 3rd, they can be counted for up to 2 weeks after the election. And I say, well, now we haven't experienced this, but knock on wood, it can happen. Because of provisional balloting, which was the federal law that allowed people, if somehow they went to the polling place and we said, well, we can't find you, you got to go home. Maybe we made a mistake. So provisional voting means people can go ahead and vote. We separate the ballots. We have up to 2 weeks to check those out, and if in fact they were properly registered, we count it. If not, we don't count it, but we automatically register them. So because we already have that 2-week legal delay, which in most cases doesn't affect us, hopefully not, we also changed the law to allow any mail ballots, if they're postmarked the day before the election, to count. And Langdon and I both know we've seen ballots that come in a week later, they're postmarked. We've seen FedExes come in 4 or 5 days later. So this is another protector for the public. So if you haven't gotten your mail ballot and you requested it, don't wait around anymore unless you're home today and get it in the mail and grab a postmark today. Otherwise, just go to your precinct and vote. Overall turnout, as you know, is usually about 50%. In that package you can see the exact numbers. Something relatively new in Cook County, and Langdon will talk about the city, we have electronic poll books now in all of the polling places. We had a successful pilot in the primary with E-Pollbooks. We've also been using them during early voting. We believe the train has gone well. We're optimistic about their role. It's really important technology to have in the precincts. But of course, with any rollout, we're always aware of any particular problems. If there are problems with these electronic poll books in the precincts, we have Plan B just in case. We have all the paper. So if the electronic poll book checking you in, if that doesn't work for some reason, or we have an inexperienced judge, we go right to the paper, which we'll still have, which will have all of your names in it. Okay. A few polling place changes. We have 37 out of more than 1,000. And all those places where there's a polling place change because of an emergency or whatever reason, we have mailed postcards to those people so they know where to go tomorrow. A few general tips finally, and that is, of course, we're open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. It is a long ballot. It's a long ballot if you're on the touch screen. You've got 16 pages to go through, mostly because of the judges. 2 if you're voting by paper, 2 cards on both sides. Cheat sheets. Remember, there's a lot of people on there. I don't know all the judges. For example, you can take something to booth with you. If you need to do that, please do it. Do not worry about it. We have hotlines for language minorities, and we also have hotlines for reporting irregularities. We will have lots of people out there. We call them rovers. We will have state's attorneys. We'll have our attorneys. The bottom line is this is an intense election. People do care, and the parties care, particularly over a big election. And so, yes, it's going to be very contested, but we just ask everyone to be cool. We will have people monitoring out there. All we ask is the judges, the poll workers, everybody else involved behave themselves. If so, we'll be fine. If not, I believe we'll be ready for it. And I'd like to turn it over to Langdon Neal, Chairman of the City Board of Elections.
Good morning, everyone. Langdon Neal, Chairman, Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. To review the City of Chicago's progress so far on early voting and absentee balloting and grace period, we have had 113,911 early votes this election cycle. That's a 33% increase on where we were 4 years ago. We've had a 23% increase in the number of absentee ballots returned. We have received 29,430 ballots. Voting during grace period, we've had 4,217 voters utilize grace period voting to date, for a total of 151,775 Chicago voters have voted as of today. That's a 35% increase in where we were 4 years ago. I think David did a great job summarizing the changes that you'll see on election day and changes that we've had so far. Just a couple other reminders. Remember, voters, you are to if you use paper, you are to receive 2 ballots, 2 paper ballots. Please remember that, and if you were only given 1, ask for the second one, please. Remember, tomorrow is the Voters' Day. We will be aggressively enforcing our campaign free zone. So for the candidates, for the campaign workers, for Get Out the Vote, civic groups, remember, you have to respect the voters and the polling place, and we will enforce a 100-foot campaign free zone around each polling place. We'll have investigators workers for the Chicago Board of Elections out in the street on election day. If you see anything that you think is not proper, please contact us at Election Central, 312-269-7870. 312-269-7870. The only other thing is I want to speak directly to, at this time, to our judges of election, all City of Chicago judges of election. Over the weekend, we received dozens of very disturbing reports about robocalls and other types of calls made to our election judges at their homes and on their cell phones. In these calls, the robocalls said that an additional training session was needed for the judges. This is not true. If you attended a training session conducted by the Chicago Board of Elections, that is the only training session you need to attend. No other training session will affect your service or your pay. Secondly, dozens of our judges reported receiving calls demanding that they vote a certain way in order to serve as election judges. I want to remind all our judges and all our voters that your ballot is secret. No one has the ability or right to know how you voted. You vote how you want to in the polling place, and there's no record of your vote with your name. So, to our judges, that is misinformation, improper information. Please ignore these robocalls. We, of course, think it's wrong for people to try to intimidate or interfere with our judges of election. The judges of election run the election on Election Day. And for this reason, we sent out an email to more than 6,000 of our judges last night, letting them know that there's no surprise second training and there's no requirement that they divulge how they vote. That's where it's open for questions.